Hey, this is Blonde Guy Gamer, and welcome to what is essentially a follow-up from my Rocket Knight Adventures series in Retrospect video. Because since that video over 8 years ago, things are a little different. I'm not just talking about my hair length. For starters, I got a few more Rocket Knight related things. Like a complete in-box copy of Rocket Knight Adventures, though I still use the first copy I have whenever I want to play the game off of a cartridge. A vintage pin to Sparkster. My friend Danny got me this Rocket Knight Adventures shirt for Christmas one year, though it's not an actual official one. I think it's from Redbubble. And unfortunately some of Sparkster's face came off in the wash, but we'll just say it's some soot from the Rocket Pack or something. And most important of all, we got a brand new collection from Limited Run. Rocket Knight Adventures Resparked. So with this, I figured it was a good enough excuse to dig up the goggles again and talk about it for a quick video.
Rocket Knight Adventures Resparked was released digitally on June 11th of this year on Switch, PlayStation 4 and 5, and Steam. But I naturally wanted a physical copy from Limited Run, so I waited until the following month before my copy arrived. And I'm glad I did get it, not just because I like physical media, but because this does have reversible cover art, a booklet with a short synopsis on each game, and surprisingly, a reprint of the Sparkster comics, which I'm really glad to finally have. Even if the lettering is pretty small due to the size of the booklet for the Switch case specifically, it's probably not nearly as small for the PlayStation copies, so it will likely test you if you need reading glasses or not.
Which I don't. I'm not that old yet.
This is what's included in a standard physical copy for Switch, though there were a few extra things with the collector's edition, and while I was tempted, I was fine with just a regular copy. Though that didn't stop my friends OneRoll and STXCR to try and give me a Sparkster plushie from them.
And before you go, gee Blondie, why did your friends let you have 2 Sparkster plushies? They actually didn't know the other was also planning on getting me one, so the other went to Zero Master.
As for what's actually on the collection, it has Rocket Knight Adventures and both the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo Sparkster games, which means the 2010 Rocket Knight isn't in this. However, that game is still surprisingly available outside of this. At one point since the In Retrospect video, it became available to buy again on Steam and still is. And even with the Xbox 360 store closing, the game is actually backwards compatible, so it is on Xbox One and Series, which is kind of ironic considering Resparked isn't on those. Heck, even the PlayStation 3 version is still available thanks to Sony backing away from closing that store, though who knows how long that will still be up. And you can sort of play it on modern PlayStations, if you don't mind getting premium PlayStation Plus and playing it through streaming. The games that are here are running on Limited Run's Carbon engine, which does have a few things implemented. There's a rewind function along with being able to save and load a state in each game, a few video sizes, a CRT filter, and borders. Though I just left the game on the 4:3 setting and was fine with that, even if it's not technically the correct aspect ratio, but otherwise you can go with more properly scaled or even original resolutions, but you may need to do some cropping of your own for those. And exclusively for Super Nintendo Sparkster, there's a boost mode, which reduces the slowdown this game originally had. As far as I can tell, these games run pretty faithfully otherwise, and with the rewind function, it's pretty convenient to just casually play through them. So I had a good time revisiting these games, and my opinions on them haven't really changed. Rocket Knight Adventures is still the best, and is actually my favorite Sega Genesis game, so it's kinda hard to change that. Genesis Sparkster is still good, just hampered by some level pacing and the roulette system that just spews up bombs a lot of the time, especially on hard. Though it does give me an excuse to use this joke for it now.
Let's go gambling! Aw, dang it! Aw, dang it! Aw, dang it!
And lastly, SNES Sparkster I prefer a little over Genesis, but it has those difficulty spikes, particularly the mech fight against Axel. But at least the rewind and save states make that fight much easier to deal with here. Now I can finally beat this butthole on the hard difficulty. And before you say that doesn't count, I did learn how you generally do this fight better. It just made that process go faster. But I feel like that fight has a lot of RNG regardless. Though the rewind and save states do make the pass resistance in the Sparkster games kinda pointless unless you want to go to a specific level from the start. But that doesn't detract much from the games as a whole. However, there are a couple alterations that were made to the games. The controller configuration and audio options in each game are omitted. But since I was fine with the original default controls, that didn't bother me, but you'll need to go into the system control settings if you do want to change that. Rocket Knight Adventures and Genesis Sparkster simply had those gone from their option screens, but Super Nintendo Sparkster got the worst, where it's just a black screen with a difficulty option. I guess they had to get rid of the Super Nintendo controller image if they weren't going to do controller configurations and have this be on multiple systems. But did they really have to remove almost everything else from this screen? And that's not the only thing they took out from this game specifically, as Sparkster no longer does the peace sign at the end. I'm guessing they removed it for a similar reason why Mario doesn't do that in the Super Mario RPG remake. It's still a pretty awkward edit and will probably cause some people to think a Mandela effect happened on whether or not Sparkster does the peace sign in this game. Though to me those are minor complaints, as I still think these are fine versions of the games to play. And you can even switch to the Japanese releases to easily see those intro cutscene and stage transition differences in Rocket Knight Adventures, so I no longer need to use this weird bootleg cartridge if I want access to that. The Japanese version is also where you can put in a level select code, and that still works here. Just wait until the Konami logo appears after a demo to put that in for this, and you're good. Plus, saves are separate for the Japanese versions, so I made a save after putting the code in so I can have easy access to level select. You can also play the Japanese Sparkster games too, of course, but those don't have as much differences. But still neat that you can play those. Of course, it's not just the 3 games in this package, as there are a few more things and features, such as an animated intro from Studio Mila, a music player with the game's soundtracks, and a museum gallery featuring all sorts of images from magazine ads to design documents to even box arts and manuals, which is nice if you only had the cartridges like I did. Which means that you too can now discover these guys from SNES Sparkster called Stampy Doos from this, and not have to resort to eBay listing pictures of the manual like I did back in the day. Also, I love this face of Sparkster here. Ooh! Though for some reason the North American manual for Genesis Sparkster isn't here. I'm not sure why that's not included. Also, the images are prone to just keep moving at times as if your controller has analog drift, so it seems pretty sensitive to that. But everything else is nice. I was even able to learn new lore about Super Nintendo Sparkster, like how Axel ended up with the Wolf Army, or that the robots you fight Axel with were for space construction, and that the submarine for its level was called the Blue September, my favorite legally distinct named submarine. Also, the princess was apparently from Sapphirus originally, which actually is what the kingdom in the Japanese Rocket Knight Adventures was called, but I didn't realize that, which is why I got confused it was called that in Rocket Knight and not Zebulos like in the American Rocket Knight Adventures. Lastly, there's a boss rush mode for each game, where you clear as many bosses as you can without dying, and the more you complete, the higher rank you get. It's pretty simple and the transitions are pretty abrupt, but still something if you want a challenge. And while there isn't a ton of things, the presentation of the collection is nice. I like the animated intro, the artwork, and the remix theme in the menu is good. It even has a sick saxophone solo at one point. Though the volume is considerably louder than the actual games. Overall, I think this is a fine enough collection and a nice easy way to play the 16-bit games after over 30 years. I may have actual HD means of playing my cartridges that I wish I had for the original video, as composite Genesis footage is pretty but Respark makes it all the more convenient as it's now my preferred casual way of replaying these games in crisp high definition. Of course, it may be up to you if this is worth getting, as it costs $30 US. I think it was worth it for a physical copy, but that's just the collector in me.
I know one argument, especially on Steam, is, oh, you're paying $10 per game for a ROM collection and barebone editions? Why bother? But considering it costs hundreds of dollars to try and get original copies of these games, I'd say it's a good deal in comparison. And besides, saying you can just emulate them demeans releases like this if we do want these games to be readily available to the masses, and show our support that people actually do care about these games. I know I'm being my usual half-glass full self, but I am just glad this collection did happen at all. And if the price does still bother you, then you can wait for it to go on sale. Maybe it's on sale right now as you're watching this video. You're welcome if that's the case. So thank you to Limited Run as well as Konami for remembering you actually had these games and allowing me to do this. And thank you to those who watched the original In Retrospect video. I'm surprised it got as much views as it did over the years, so hopefully you enjoyed this little follow-up as well. Though I'm probably not going to make another one of these anytime soon, considering I should maybe, make more actual In Retrospect videos, and not one every 4 to 5 years. Plus, I don't really want to do a follow-up on Time Splitters unless I want to depress myself and the fan base. So much for being optimistic, thanks Embracer Group. The only silver lines being is that the Xbox and PlayStation 2 versions did get re-released on those respective modern platforms, and Time Splitters Rewind is still in the works, but who knows how much longer its development will take. But that's not enough for a video like this right now. Well, regardless, at least Rocket Knight Adventures got something nice out of this. And we're probably not going to get anything else from the series. Even though Tom Hewlett did want to make a sequel to Rocket Knight where you play as Sparkster's son, but the lackluster success of that and him leaving Konami in 2013 likely prevented that. So I don't think that will ever happen. Just something to think of as a could-have-been game if Rocket Knight did do better. Oh well. Anyway, have a good rest of the holidays and a happy new year, and I'll see you all in the next video then. And I do mean to actually get my full-fledged videos done more than once a year, so I should be seeing you all sooner and more frequently than later for next year.